I'm Sarah Rogers, Director of the Kent State University Museum. I welcome you to this Fashion Focus. Today we'll be chatting with Vincent Quevedo. Vincent is an associate professor in the fashion school here at Kent State University. He is an accomplished and award-winning designer of garments, theatrical wear, and quilts. When I first got to Kent about 2 years ago, Vincent was one of the first designers that I met, and he approached me with the idea of creating an exhibition that commemorated his 30 years of teaching. As the conversation evolved, we began to sort out and focus on really what his current activity has been. The result of that is this exhibition, Fortuna, Designs by Vincent Quevedo, currently on view in the Higbee Gallery, and it will be up through March 7th of 2021. What you will find in this exhibition is a range of Vincent's creative activity. He goes high and low with materials, with processes, a whole range of ideas, some of them very emotional and provocative. You will see his theatrical costume designs, as well as garments from his ready-to-wear line of clothing, and also his quilts. And he's an excellent quilt maker and has really been embraced by the quilt community. We have a series that are portraits and self-portraits of quilts that really explore the range of mental health, mental states, and question mental well-being. And now, let's hear from the designer himself, Vincent Quevedo.
Columbus Highball is an event every year that attracts 30,000 to 40,000 people in Columbus. And it's been going on for, about 10 years. And my students have always asked me if I would do it. And I kind of thought that was a challenge. So after 3 years of them asking me to do something like that, I looked into it and found out that most of the people that are in it are professionals. And so I thought, okay, I could do that. But I interpreted the rules as fashion because that's how it started. And, but it turned out to be more like costume. And I've not ever done costume. And so I thought, well, okay, this is a good challenge. And so that's why I took it on. And the people were great, and I loved every minute of it. I wanted to send out a positive message about myths, stories, about things from the past. And Fortuna Burana was a Roman god about giving people fortune. And there is a statue of her, and she's blindfolded with holding a scale. And the scale is supposed to be balanced, and the blindfold is so that she doesn't see who it is she's giving fortune to, because it doesn't matter if you're poor or rich, sick or healthy. She wanted to give fortune to everyone. And so that was the message, that, fortune, you could be given fortune no matter what. And so that's what I wanted. And because I was thinking it was fashion, I thought that would be couture. And I wanted something grand. I wanted something big. And I wanted something that people would go, wow, to. The committee for Highball required that I send them a mood board and some sketches. And so I had to follow that route. They hire people to do makeup and hair. And so they wanted to know what my inspiration was, what the music was, everything, so that they could get my image that I wanted. And so I did start out with a sketch, and I don't do like an illustration, I just do like a flat sketch of how I wanted the garment to be made. And I knew that I wanted it to be dramatic, so I knew it was going to be 2 pieces. I knew it was going to be large, so there's over 80 yards of fabric. And it was going to be synthetic fabrics, because at the time it was scheduled for outside, and I didn't know what was going to happen, and I didn't want to spend lots of money, to use silk, and I knew that it was a costume. And I strategically looked back on what had been done before in years prior, and I thought, well, I think it's okay, not to use silk. So I went ahead and did this, and because it was so big also, I knew that it was going to take a lot of yards and sewing. So because I like things to be dramatic, I knew there was going to be 2 pieces, and that the first piece was going to be either a coat or a cape, and there was going to be taken off, and underneath would be a very small, slim person wearing a very bright and sequined bodysuit. And so that's what I did. And of course, being a fiber artist, I wanted to do fiber artist stuff. And so I took fabric and I discharged it, which means taking color out. And I purchased fabric from Walmart that was black. And I bleached it, and what turned out was a golden orange. And then after that, I dyed it again to get more red into it. And so it looks like fire. And then I added the feathers to it. And I think that added more for the drama. And so, so it's 3 pieces altogether: the cape, the bodysuit, and the corset. Well, for that competition, the ready-to-wear is part of the costume. And what it had to do was it had to relate to the costume. Now, my interpretation again was ready-to-wear, as in fashion. And so what I did was I used fabric that was donated to faculty from a company, and it was synthetic leather fabric, but it was really a high-tech activewear fabric. And so I used that fabric, plus I also had leather that I hadn't used in years, and so I wanted to use that and to compare the 2, synthetic and the real thing. Also, when I design and or make something, I always try to use it as a teaching tool. And so while I'm making it or designing it, I'm showing my students, well, this is how you do this. This is how you sew with leather. This is how you sew with pleather. And so I always try to use that as a teaching lesson for them. And so that gave me an opportunity. And plus, we don't teach fiber arts in this school. It's ready to wear, it's couture, it's all that. And so I thought this would be a good opportunity for them to learn something really easy and something basic as discharging fabric. And so it was, so that's what I did. And the ready-to-wear collection was a collection inspired by Madonna of the 1980s. And I titled it Redux 1980s. And although it doesn't look like Madonna, that was what was my impetus to do the collection. And so again, they're simple pieces, but they're dramatic in certain ways. They're ready to wear, but not really ready to wear, because some of those things it would be very difficult to manufacture. For one, with like one dress with the shags on the bottom, that would be difficult to do. So imagination plus creativity. I was hoping that what I'd come across with both the ready-to-wear and the costume was that people were going to be wowed. And that's what I tell my students. When you design something, what reaction do you want the people to have when they see it? And the reaction I wanted was, wow. When I started to teach in 1990, actually a little bit prior to that when I was in grad school, I had read a magazine, and this magazine was about wearable arts. And in it were garments that were designed by artists that were quilted. And one of my life goals at the time was, I want to get into this magazine. I want to do what they're doing. And so at first I thought, well, I better learn how to quilt. So I did a basic quilt block, and I hated it. I don't know what I hated, if it was the precision, I don't know. But I didn't like it, and I think maybe because I tried to copy, because quilting is so traditional. And I wanted something a little bit different. And then I saw designs by Jeffrey Bean, 1990, 1991, and he had quilted garments that had channel stitching on it, and I fell in love with that. And in one year when I was in San Francisco working, my garments they were in a store in Nicholas Couture Sutton Couture. And the day I wasn't there, it wasn't my store, but I visited often, they had a visitor. And the visitor was him, Jeffrey Bean. And I was, the owner of the store called me up right away. You will not believe who was just here, and he saw your stuff and was just, blown away with it. And so there was like this, even though I've never met the man, there was that connection, and I thought, no, I loved his channel stitching, and so I've done that. And channel stitching, or it's also called echo stitching, are lines that follow an outline that are even and the same throughout. And so that's what I did for most of my quilted garments, and it still holds true today. But I also, this year was a breakout year for me, because I usually do work that's by myself. I do everything. But I did reach out to someone who became a very good friend of mine, who did long arm quilting. And I said, this is what I want to do, and this is the kind of stitching I want done. Is that possible? Long arm stitching is a sewing machine that is hooked on to a gliding track. And this machine can move side by side and up and down. So if you take a look at your comforter or your quilt, there's all those designs on it. And that's what a long arm quilter does. Now, I tried to do that with a basic sewing machine, and it's possible, but very difficult. And it took me forever to do. And so when I had met Rita Kilpatrick, we became really good friends. We did other things than quilted stuff, gossiped a lot and just chatted, and we became really good partners in doing this. And so hopefully we will continue with the partnership. And so I incorporated her work with my work. Mother Nature 2 is a garment that I had come up with this idea around like 1998, somewhere there, where I wanted to start melting synthetic fabric. Well, actually just wanted to melt fabric. And the way that I had thought about it was I was watching I Love Lucy. I Love Lucy. Lucy was given a set allowance that she could spend every week. And Ricky said, that's gotta go because I can't afford this. And so she had to learn how to do her hair, color her hair, set her hair, and also learn how to sew. While she was sewing and she was pressing it, she left the iron on the floor on the carpet, and it melted the carpet. And that's how I got the idea. So I was trying to melt fabric with an iron, and of course that didn't work. I tried it over the stove, and that was dangerous. And so someone told me about a heat gun. And so I went and got a heat gun, and I was melting everything that was put in front of me. And I learned how to control the heat gun to make it melt a certain way, or to melt it to a certain point, because when you melt synthetic fabric, it's plastic. I've always been interested in faces, because faces are like snowflakes. There's many faces, but they're all different. And I just think faces are so beautiful. I did pout, and I use faces with people that I know. And with faces, I did Dr. Ji-Hyun Vic, who is a good friend of mine. And I just came up with her with a camera, and I just shot her face. And I said, let's make some faces. And then she goes, what is this for? I said, actually, this is going to be something, I don't know yet. And she didn't know what kind of face, because she thought it was going to be like a portrait. And I said, no, I want you to pout. I want you to scream. I want you to make a face. And so she pouted, and I really liked her pout. And so I took the picture of the pout, and I put it in the garment. And when I put faces on a garment, there's two layers. One is a layer that's underneath, and that's usually the photograph, which hasn't been altered. And then I put a silk layer on top of that, and that's been altered with Photoshop. And really the only thing that's been altered are colors. I don't change the face or anything. And so when you look at the garment, I wanted it to look sort of three-dimensional. So wherever you're standing and looking at the face, it looks like it's three-dimensional. And that's why I do the two layers. I created a quilt called Ophelia from the story of Ophelia drowning. And so that was the quilt that I came up with. And it's probably my favorite one. So current work that I'm doing are the quilts, and the newest ones are based on mental health. I didn't want to put one quilt as, well, this is because of depression, or this one is because of whatever. And it's more about feeling. A lot of my work is also based on my personal life. And depression is something that I've struggled with for many years. And whether, that's a natural thing, or if it was because of an event, people go through life with how they react. And I learned a long time ago that depression has been with me probably my whole life. And so these quilts are based on how I was feeling, and how do I present that? How will I impress people with how I'm feeling, and I wanted them to look at it and, yes, question it, but I wanted them to understand what I was trying to get through. And so I'm lucky that I'm working at a university, and I have students that are more than happy to lend me their images. And I told them, of course, what the project was, and they were more than happy to do it. And I said, I don't know what it's going to be like, because I have to wait until I go through something, I guess. And so that's how I came up with those. When people look at my work, I'm not trying to convince them of anything. I'm not trying to tell them what design or art should be. I'm presenting my work and who I am, and hopefully it will get them to look at things from a different point of view, a different perspective, because there are so many different and many people that want to be understood. They have something to share. And I'm very fortunate to have a platform to be able to present myself and my work, and to let people know that there are many different faces in this world, and that we have something to say, and that what we have to say might be something of value to other people, and hopefully that they can learn from it. And I don't know if that's because I teach, and I think it's important to be able to give people tools or ways of thinking, but that's my goal, is to share myself with people, and if they learn something from what I've been able to give them, then I think I've done my job.
Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this Fashion Focus conversation with Vincent Quevedo. To keep up to date on programs and exhibitions here at the KSU Museum, visit www.kent.edu/museum. We look forward to seeing you soon in our galleries. Thank you for your support.